Hi, and welcome back to The Joy of Ray Tracing, a series in which we make several ray tracers from scratch. On the last episode, we got our very first pixel up on the screen, and although that doesn't seem like a lot, it actually is sort of a rite of passage for graphics programmers, so we should feel proud. We're going to use that basic knowledge of how to color a little pixel on the screen and build upon that knowledge, and eventually we'll be doing that for all the pixels on the screen. So today we're going to do just a little housekeeping on our project. As you recall, last time we had done what's known as inline styling on our HTML document, and we had done inline scripting as well. And so today we're going to take all that styling information and all that script information and pull it out of the HTML file and put everything in its own separate file. And that way we have some separation of concerns. So here's what we're going to do today. Today's to-dos. First, we'll learn how to add an external CSS style sheet to our HTML document, and that way we'll have all the CSS stylings for our page out on its own file. And this is the preferred method to styling up your HTML documents. Then we'll remove the old inline stylings from our HTML document that we had last time and instead put them in their own style sheet file, which is a CSS file. And then for basic text output on our web page, we'll make a P element and we'll style it with our new style sheet. We'll also use our new style sheet to resize the drawing canvas so that it fills the entire web page. Then we'll set the canvas resolution itself, and that will tell the browser how many pixels we want the canvas to be in width and how many pixels we want the canvas to be in height. And in a similar fashion, we will remove the script code from our HTML document and move it into its own JavaScript file. Once our canvas is filling the full browser window and we have the resolution that we want in width and height in pixels, then we can play around with our new 2D screen coordinates using JavaScript. So let's get started. Let's open up Visual Studio Code. And here's what we were working on last time. You can see we have some inline stylings here, as well as some inline script. And so our goal today is to remove all that and put it in its own separate file. So actually, for this new way of doing things, I want to create a brand new HTML file that we can start working with. So go over to where it says Ray Tracing Projects and click on the New File icon. And this one is all about styling the canvas today, so let's call it Styled Canvas.html. And remember, it has to be the extension HTML for the browser to recognize it. Hit enter. And so now that gives us our newly created file called styledcanvas.html. And then here's our older one. So let's literally copy and paste all this code and just dump it into the styled canvas file. And then we're going to use that as a basis to start working from. Select all the code and copy it, so Control C. and then click on Style Canvas and Control V. Right away, let's change the title so we don't get confused as to which document we're working with. And this one's called Styled Canvas. Okay, so first let's focus on removing the styles from this document and putting the style information in its own file, which will be a CSS file. Now let's create a folder where we can put all our styles in. So let's create a new folder. Click on this icon here, and then we'll call that CSS. Hit enter. So now you should see a folder named CSS right up here. With that selected, create a new file. And this will create a new file inside the CSS folder. So click on New File. And then let's call this Styles. And here's something new. Now we're going to make the extension CSS. So type .css. And you should see a little pound symbol here, or a hashtag. And that means it recognizes that you want a CSS file. So hit enter. And now that brings that up in the editor window, and that's called styles.css. So let's now go back to our styled canvas. And in fact, let's click out of the My Web Page. So click X on My Web Page, just so that we don't accidentally work with that one. Now we only have styledcanvas.html and styles.css in our editor window. Before we go any further, let's open this up in the browser and recall what it looked like so that we can make it look the same when we move all the stylings out of the HTML document and into their own CSS file. So as you recall, you click on the Go Live button down here on the right bottom corner. And that should give us our web page that we were working on last time, except now that it's called Styled Canvas because we changed the title. And it says Hello Canvas. It has the canvas here, which is 300 pixels by 150 pixels. And it has a big magenta rectangle sort of in the middle. And we'll work on that later, getting it exactly in the middle. So now let's go back to our code. And we'll work on these stylings one at a time. So let's do the body styling first. So select the style all the way to the and through the quotes, and then hit backspace. Then you should be left with just the body opening tag here. So it should be left angle bracket, body, right angle bracket. Now if you go back to your web page, it removed the styling. So now it's that bright white color that we don't like staring at for too long. So let's try to fix that now. What we need to set up in our HTML document is a link to the new CSS file. So how you do that is click on to the right of title and hit enter. This link is going to be inside the head element. And now we're going to create a link element. And so the link element is a little special because it only has one tag. It is called an empty element. So there's no opening and closing tags for this one. And I'll show you that now. So let's do the left angle bracket, which is shift less than sign. And then look for the link tag. Here we go. Now before you type the right angle bracket, let's give it a little information about the link so that it can find our new CSS file. So type space, and then type H, and you'll see href pop up. That stands for hypertext reference. It's a little bit of an archaic name, but it kind of stuck around, so that's what we use today. So this just means the actual link itself. So hypertext reference, so href, and you can see it fills in the equals sign and the quotes. And so inside the quotation marks, we're going to put the path to our CSS file. And this can be a relative path. So all we do is type CSS, the name of the folder. So right there, CSS, and then /. And look at that. Visual Studio Code knows that you created a styles.css file in that folder, and then so it offers you that suggestion. And so that's really handy. I use this a lot. So click on styles.css and it'll fill it in for you. And we're not quite done yet with this link element, so put another space. We need to specify one more thing, which is the relationship of this file to the HTML document. So type R, and it should pop up. Click on REL, which is short for relationship. And then inside the quotes, we're going to type style sheet, all one word. That tells the HTML document that this is of type style sheet, and that way it knows how to handle that file. And one last thing, we need to close the tag. So go to the very end and type the right angle bracket, which is shift greater than sign. All right, so step one done. So now we need to go into styles.css and type the style rule that we would like to be applied to the body element in our HTML document. So how we do that in CSS is pretty easy. You just type body and then hit enter. Hit enter twice and go on to the next line, and then add a curly brace. And so what those are is, if you find over on the right side of the keyboard, there'll be left bracket and right bracket, and you do shift left bracket, and that'll give you a pair of curly braces. So inside these curly braces, we're going to put the styling rules that we want applied to the body element. So hit enter, and that'll put you on the next line. And then similar to how we did it in the HTML document, you just start typing background color and it'll fill it in for you. So start typing background, and you can see it pop up here. You can click on that, and it'll automatically populate the code necessary for changing the background color of the body element. So now, I believe we had that as gray, so you can just type a GR and it should pop up here. And then once again, our handy little color preview comes up, showing us how that's going to look. So let's see if this all works now. Let's go back to our web page and see if the background is gray once again. So let's go to the web page. Yay, we're back to parity. So we have our gray background in place, and it's actually being done through an external style sheet, which is the preferred way to style. So it might seem like a lot of work right now to move all this stuff out of the HTML document and put it in its own separate file. But as our web pages get a little more complex, later on down the line, we'll be happy that we moved everything out to its own file so that our HTML documents won't be so cluttered with styling information and JavaScript and all that. Let's go back to styled canvas.html. Now let's see if we can do the exact same thing to the canvas element itself. So select everything from style all the way through the quotation mark at the end. And then backspace, that should delete it, and you should be left with your right angle bracket that is for the canvas opening tag. And then we can hit backspace one more time just to pull that back in. Now if you go back to your web page, we took out the styling, and this is why I gave the canvas a black background, because otherwise it just shows up as whatever the background is for the entire web page, and it's here somewhere, but you can't tell where it is because it's all gray. So now let's fix that by adding a styling in our new CSS style sheet. One thing you might have noticed about this new style sheet and the language that we're using, which is CSS, is that there's no more quotations around all this, and there's no equal sign. Instead, we just have the word background color, and then a colon, and then the value that we want. And then we have a semicolon still at the end of a line because it is kind of like a statement. So CSS files are a lot less cluttered because they don't have all the quotation marks everywhere. And one thing to note also is we get a reference to the body element by just typing the word body. But for the canvas, we're actually going to call it by its ID that we gave it. So put your cursor right here and hit enter a couple of times. And how you get something by ID in CSS is you type the hashtag. And so we named our canvas element my canvas. So let's put hashtag my canvas. And it is case sensitive, so make sure that you have the capital C if you put that for your ID. So now we have a reference for the canvas element, and we hit enter. And once again, we need a couple of curly braces. So shift left bracket, and then hit enter. And then last time, recall that we had a black background for our canvas. So let's put that here. So background color, and then black popped up here, so I can just click on that. And we should be good to go. Let's go back to our web page and see if that worked. All right, so we're back to where we started. We have a gray background, which is easy on the eyes for the entire web page. And now we have a black background for our drawing canvas, which is over here. So now we're going to add some new stylings to our canvas element that will make it fill the entire browser window. So click at the end of this line and hit enter. And now we're going to set the width and the height to 100%. So width, and it gives you a percent marking here, but it starts out as 0. So we can just go in there and put 10 to make it 100%. And then hit enter after this line again. And in a similar way, we're going to give it a height of 100%. So click on height, and then you can click the percent, and then fill it in to be 100%. So let's go back to our web page and see what that did. Great. So now our drawing canvas is filling the entire page. Well, almost. I noticed some issues. So we have this gray margin up here still. The canvas doesn't start until after the words hello canvas. But then it kind of spills off the bottom of the page and we get this ugly scroll bar on the right. So you have to use that if you want to see the bottom of the canvas. What we would like to see is the canvas start right in this corner and go all the way down to this bottom right-hand corner and fill the browser window entirely. So let's see if we can make that happen. Let's go back up to the body element and give it a couple more stylings that will make the canvas element exactly fill the browser window. So hit enter after this line. And what's going on here is that the body element has a little margin right there and over on the right as well. So we're going to tell it we don't want that margin. So type margin and it'll come up margin. And then you can click on 0%. And this time we do want the 0%. So we want absolutely no margin. Let's see what that did. Okay, a little better. However, we still have hello canvas up here, and that is taking up this spot up here. So for now, let's remove the hello canvas text. And we'll put some text back in there shortly. So let's see if that fixed the top part of our web page. Okay, great. Our canvas is now filling the entire browser window from this pixel all the way in the left top corner all the way down to the bottom right-hand corner. And in a little while, we'll fix this little gray margin here that you're seeing on the bottom. Now, I'm sort of missing our little text output message, so let's go back and see if we can add that back in. Go to stylecanvas.html and click over here and hit backspace to move the canvas element up. And now click to the right of the canvas element and hit enter a couple of times. And now we're going to create what's known as a paragraph element, and that's denoted by the P tag. And you remember how to do this, right? So left angle bracket, P, and then you can click there, right angle bracket to close it up, and then it automatically gives you the closing tag. And now let's type some text in there. So this is some text. And let's see if that showed up in our web page. Oh, it's down there. So what happened is it just kind of appended it to the end of the document. And now we have the ugly scroll bar back in the picture. So you have to scroll down to see your text message over here. And so let's see if we can fix all that now. First, let's see if we can get rid of this scroll bar. So go back into styles.css, and in the body element, let's give it one more style. So click to the right of the margin setting and hit enter. And now we're going to type overflow hidden. So overflow, you can click on there, and then hidden is right here. That's what we want. So essentially what that does is it just chops off whatever falls off the end of the web page. So now let's go back to our web page, and as you can see, the scroll bar is gone, so that's good. But now I can't read my text message at the bottom. So let's see if we can fix that now. Go back to stylecanvas.html, and much in the same way that we created an ID for the canvas, we're going to create an ID for this paragraph element. And so click between the letter P and the right angle bracket and then push space. And now start typing ID and it'll pop up. And it fills in the rest for you. And now in between the quotation marks, we type, let's call it my text. So my text. That'll allow us to get a reference to it back in the CSS file. So go to styles.css, and exactly in the same way that we got a reference to my canvas, we're going to get a reference to my text down here. So click on to the right of this curly brace and hit enter a couple times. And then let's type hashtag my text. Enter, left curly brace, and it'll fill in the other one for you, and then hit enter. And now to get that text back up to the top, we're going to give it a fixed position so that it can't be moved around. So let's try that. So type position and click on position here, and then the fixed option is at the top or near the top. So click on that. All right. And let's see what that did. Well, I'm not sure if that worked. It might be still down here. So let's try to move it up to the top left corner. And how we do that in CSS is type the word top. And then it'll give you a distance from the top that you can place your element. So let's do 0% for now and see if that worked. Well, it could be there, but as you recall, we had a black text now on a black background, so we can't see it. Let's change the text color, and that's super easy in CSS. You just start typing color. So let's do that. Click over here and then hit enter. Color. And let's do a bright yellow. So start typing yellow and it should pop up. Click on there. And then it gives you a little preview of what it's going to look like, which is handy. And now let's see if that worked. Yay! We have our text back. So we have up here in the top left-hand corner, this is some text. And that's our text element that we added with the P tag. And then we have our canvas, which fills the entire browser window. So we're getting there. So now let's see if we can get rid of this gray border here at the bottom. And that has to do with the canvas element itself. So let's go back into the CSS file and go under My Canvas. And much in the same way we did position fixed for my text, we're going to do the exact same thing for My Canvas. So you can click anywhere. Oh, and by the way, it doesn't matter what order you have these rule settings in. So you can have like position, top, color, or you could have color, top, position, or you could have color, position, top. It doesn't matter. So let's just click at the end of height here and then hit enter. And then type position, and there it is. Click on the position word and then click on the fixed option. All right, so let's see if that worked. Perfect. Now we have our text back in a nice bright yellow so we can see it. We have a canvas element with a black background that fills the entire browser window and no ugly scroll bar on the right. So success. Now with CSS, there's many different styling options that you can have for all the elements on your web page. So let's just take a look at a couple of them so we can get an idea of what you can do. Let's change this font and also change the size of this text. So go back to styles.css and under the My Text element, click to the right of this line and hit enter. Now let's change the font size. So start typing font and it'll give you a lot of options that you can set. So let's pick font size and let's choose extra large just for now. Now let's see what that looks like. And as you can see, it made it extra large on the web page. So now we can really read it. Let's change the font itself now. So go back into styles and then click to the right of this line, hit enter, start typing font again. And now let's do font family. And as you can see, it gives you a lot of useful choices at this point. So for now, let's choose Arial. And it populates some other ones as well, in case the browser doesn't have those. But most browsers nowadays have Arial. So let's go back and see what that looks like. And there we go. We successfully changed the font size and the font family. As you can see, styling with CSS is really easy. So you just specify the property that you want, and then you just give it a value, and you're done. There's no extra quotation marks around everything to clutter it up like you have in HTML. So let's leave CSS behind for the moment, and now let's focus on removing the JavaScript from our HTML file and putting it in its own JS file. So let's do that now. Go back to stylecanvas.html, and we see this script tag that we had added the JavaScript code inside, and this is the inline method, so all this JavaScript is just inline. So much in the same way that we created a CSS folder with a CSS file inside, let's create a JS folder with a JS file inside. Click on Styled Canvas just to make sure you're in the root folder, and now click on New Folder, and we're going to name this one JS. So JS, enter, and then click on JS, and now click on New File. I like my JavaScript files to be named something similar to the HTML file that they're associated with. So let's call this one Styled Canvas. But rather than having the HTML file extension, we're going to do a .js file extension. So .js. Oh, and you can see that it put a little symbol here for JS. That means it recognizes that you want to create a JavaScript file. So hit enter. And now our folder structure should be, we have a CSS folder containing a styles.css file. And then we have a JS folder now containing a styledcanvas.js file. And then on the outside of all those, we have our main HTML documents. Okay, so the first thing we have to do is go back in the HTML file and grab all the JavaScript and cut it out of there and then paste it into this new JS file. So let's do that. So go back to stylecanvas.html and then select everything between these two script tags. So all the way from the let to the semicolon right here. Now hit Control X to cut it, and then go to stylecanvas.js and Control V to paste. And as you can see, it kind of put it in there funny because we had a different spacing in our HTML file. So now one of the cool things about VS Code is it has a good formatter on there, so you can do right click and then scroll down to Format Document, click that, and like magic, it puts it all back in order. So now we're not quite done yet because the script is now missing. It's over here in this file, but the document doesn't know that. So if you go back to your web page real quick, our beautiful magenta rectangle is gone. So let's add the link now to get that JS file. First, let's put these two script tags, the opening and closing tags, on the same line. So click to the left of this left angle bracket and then hit backspace until you get back to the opening tag. There we go. Now just push a space between them so you can see the opening tag and the closing tag. Now all we're going to do is add a link so that the HTML file can find our JavaScript file. Oh, and by the way, we still need this script element with the opening and closing tags to tell the browser that there's some script that it needs to load. And so now let's click in between the T and the right angle bracket and push space. And you think it might be href, but this one is actually source. So it's a little different than the link element here. And so we have script, and then we're going to specify the source, which is denoted by src. So type S, and it should pop up src, which stands for source. Now it should fill in the rest for you, and then inside the quotations, we're going to put the file path to our JavaScript file. And so as you recall, we have to go in the JS folder, and then it's stylecanvas.js. But as mentioned before, VS Code is super helpful in this regard in that it knows that you already created that file, and so it's going to give you it as an option. So let's start typing JS folder and type /, and look at that, it pops up again. So stylecanvas.js, and that refers to this file that we created just a minute ago. So click on stylecanvas.js. I just love that because it almost knows what you're thinking. So now when the browser scans this document, it gets to this point and says, oh, there's a script element here, so that means I need to go get that JavaScript, and here's the file path where I have to go to find it. So it'll go search for it, and it's in here under stylecanvas.js, and then it'll execute this code. So now if we typed everything in correctly, we should have parity with what we had on the canvas last time. So let's check that out. Yay, we have our beautiful magenta rectangle back. So let's take a look now at our new and improved HTML document. I don't know about you, but I much rather look at something like this than something like this where everything's all mixed in. You got styles, you got code, and you got 3 different languages. You got HTML, you got CSS stylings in that language, and then you got JS code and JavaScript. So this is much better to look at, in my opinion. And it has separation of concerns now. So all of our stylings are in this file, and all of our JavaScript code that gives the web page functionality is in this file. So now that we have our JavaScript code running successfully, let's go change the resolution of the canvas so that we can get more pixels and it's not so blown up. So go in styled canvas.js, and now click to the right of this line and hit enter a couple of times. The canvas element allows you to set its resolution, which means how wide in pixels it is and how tall in pixels it is. So the way we do that is type canvas, and then dot width, and space equals, and now we can get the full amount of pixels that our browser has by calling the window object. And the window object is the global browser window object itself. So let's type window dot, and we want the window's width as well. So you think you would put window.width, but actually it's window.inner width. There is an inner width and an outer width, and an inner height and an outer height. Because of the display of the browser, it wants to know if you want to include the browser Chrome and the menus and things like that. So let's just get the inner width. And you can see it pop up here, inner width. And then this is a statement, remember, in JavaScript, so we have to enter a semicolon at the end of the line. And now we're going to do the same thing for the height. So canvas. And by the way, when you see me doing this, canvas, and then it automatically fills in like that, I'm hitting enter. So try one more time. CA, and then I just hit enter, and it fills it in for me. So it's really, really quick. Dot height, and for some reason VS Code doesn't give you this as an option, so you have to type it. Equals. Now let's get the window inner height, which doesn't include the browser's address window or the browser Chrome or the menu or anything like that. So window, enter, dot, inner, and you can select height. And then once again, this is a statement, so semicolon at the end. All right, so let's go see how that affected our web page. Cool. So now we have our magenta rectangle, and as you can see, it's rendered in a crisp manner now, rather than being all blown up and pixelated over here. All right, now we have much more resolution. So we're getting the resolution of the entire browser window, but one issue is that it did move it over too far to the left and up, and now it's not in the middle anymore. So we'll fix that later. But first, let's play around with JavaScript a little bit and see if we can put some of these hard-coded values into variables so that our program can be more flexible. Now today, we're not going to go over JavaScript as a programming language, but on the next episode, we'll get into JavaScript in more detail, and I'll show you how it works and also how you can use it to add a lot of functionality to the web page through event listeners and event handlers and things like that. So for now, just follow along with me as I type some JavaScript, but it's going to be really easy. So let's replace these 50s with a variable. And so let's create a couple of variables. And you recall how to do that. We type the word let rect w, and that stands for rectangle width equals 50. We're just going to try to have the same type of rectangle show up, but do it in a way where we can change it on the fly. And let's do the same for the rectangle height. So type let space rectangle and then capital H, and that stands for rectangle height, also equals 50. Okay, then let's go in here, and as you recall, the fill rectangle function takes the X and Y starting coordinates and then how big the rectangle is. This is how big it is in the X direction, and this is how big it is in the Y direction. So erase the 50 and instead type rect w. And now go here and then erase the 50 again and replace it with rect h. There we go. So if we go back and check our web page, everything should be the same. Nothing should have changed. Okay, perfect. But now we can change these numbers to be whatever we want. So let's try 200 for the width. And then now when the JavaScript interpreter gets to this line, it'll read all this. And then when it gets to rect w, it'll go look that up, and that's 200. So now it'll put a 200 in there. Let's see what that looks like. There we go. So now it's 200 pixels exactly wide by 50 pixels tall. So now let's try to put the rectangle back in the middle of the browser window, but we can't know ahead of time how many pixels there are going to be on a user's system. So they may be on a big desktop that has a lot of pixels, or a medium laptop, or like a small cell phone. And so we can't know in advance what numbers we're working with. So in order to get the true center of the window, we can just take the width that we set it to and the height that we set it to and divide those both by 2. And then that'll put us right in the middle. So let's try that now. Click to the right of this line and then hit enter a couple times. This variable will hold the halfway point of the width. First you type let space, and then let's call it half canvas, and then a capital W, which stands for half canvas width. Space equals space, and then now we just get this canvas width here, so canvas, and I hit enter when it pops up here, so canvas dot width. Now since this is half the canvas width, we're going to take the canvas width and divide it by 2. So space, and in most programming languages, the division symbol is just a /. So /, that means divided by, and then type 2, and then a semicolon. Now it takes whatever the canvas width is, which we don't know how big it is in advance, and just takes that number and divides it by 2, and then sticks the result in this variable name here. So half canvas width will hold that information. Now we just need to do for the height too. So hit enter, let half canvas, and then capital H, which stands for half canvas height, space equals space, and then canvas dot height. You can hit enter if it pops up, space, and then divided by 2, semicolon. All right, so now let's test out our variables. So go here where it says 150, erase that, and type half. And you can select it from the menu now because it knows that you created that variable just moments ago. So half canvas width. And similarly, let's erase 70 and start typing half, and it'll pop up half canvas height. Let's see if that worked. Great. Well, it almost worked. It seems to be putting it a little too far to the right and a little too far down. And so what's happening is it really is getting the true middle, and you can see it right there, right where the rectangle starts drawing. So if you think of it like a brush, it puts the brush right here. That's the true middle of the browser window. So we did find that successfully, but then it starts drawing this way and then down and fills the rectangle like that. So what we want is the rectangle itself to be in the middle. So now that's going to require just a couple more variables. So let's try that and get some practice making variables in JavaScript, because on the next episode, we'll go into much more detail about JavaScript as a programming language and what all you can do with it. So remember how we got the half canvas width by dividing the canvas width by 2, and we did the same for the height. Let's do that for the rectangle itself. So click here and hit enter a couple times, and then let half rect width, so rect w, equals, now just reference our own variable, so rect w, so R-E-C-T capital W, and then do the same thing that we did over here, so divided by 2, semicolon, enter, and then let's do the same for the height. Let half rect capital H for height equals our old variable rect H divided by 2, semicolon. So if we go back and look at our web page, what we need to do is move this rectangle back halfway and then move it up halfway as well. And so if we just subtract those new values off the old ones, then it should work. So go right here between the W and the comma and type a space. Now hit the minus key, and we're going to subtract the half rect W variable, which holds half of the rectangle itself. So type half, and it'll come up here, so half rect W. And then do the same for the height. So click between the H and the comma, put space, the minus sign, space, and then half rect height. There it is. Okay, let's see if that put it in the true middle of the screen. Yay! So everything is working now. So we have our text up here, we got our beautiful magenta rectangle in the middle of the screen, and it really is in the true middle of the browser window. So we're successful on that front. Now let's play around with the values a little bit and see if it truly stays in the middle. Now we're going to see the power of having variables in here instead of hard-coded values or hard-coded numbers. So if we change this, or this at all, it'll update this variable because this variable uses those, and then it'll update this function here that actually fills the rectangle itself. So let's try to mess around with the values. So how about 50, and let's see if it's truly in the center with a square. So 50, 50 should be a square. Yay, it's right in the middle. And you can make it really small, like 2 and by 2. And there it is. I don't know if you can see it on your screen, but there it is right there. And now let's try a bigger number, so 400 by 200. So it's still right in the middle. That's what we want. Let's change this back to a small number. So how about 40 by 20? Okay, that's good. And just to get some practice using this fill rectangle function, let's make a couple of more rectangles that occupy the corners of the browser so that we know exactly where those are and how to display everything correctly. So click to the right of this line, this last line over here, hit enter a couple times. So recall that we set the color by calling context.fillStyle equals whatever color we want. So let's make this a different color now. So context dot fill style, and it should pop up, equals, and then whatever color we want here. So how about red? And then remember to put the semicolon at the end of the line. So semicolon. Context. Now we're going to call the fill rectangle function. So dot fill rect, and there it is. And remember, fill rect is a function, so therefore it needs parentheses for its parameters. So type shift 9, which is the opening parentheses, and that should close it up for you. And now, again, Visual Studio Code comes to our aid and tells us what we need. So this is the starting X location, starting Y location, and then the width and height of the rectangle. So let's do an easy one. Let's do this one in the left top corner. So if you remember, the browser starts counting at the top left corner, and that's 0, 0. So 0, 0. That'll place it on the very left of the browser window and the very top of the browser window. Now type comma, and now we're on the width and height of the rectangle. So we could put a hard-coded value in here, but let's just make it the same as the other one. So we're going to type our variable name, which is rect w and rect h. So rect w, comma, rect h. And then remember the semicolon at the end of the line. Okay, let's see if that worked. So let's go check it out. All right, awesome. So now we have two rectangles. We have one that's right in the middle, and then a red one that's in the very top left corner. Okay, so now let's put one over here on the top right corner. And so I'm going to try that the naive way first, and you'll see why there's an error in here that we'll have to fix. So let's make a white rectangle in the top right corner. So hit enter a couple more times. And I'm going to, so y'all can see this a little better, I'm going to scroll to the middle here. So context, let's set the color. So context.fillStyle, there it is, equals white. Remember the semicolon, enter. Then let's call the fill rectangle function. So context dot fill rectangle. And then remember it's a function, so it needs parentheses, open parenthesis, and it should close it for you. And now we want it all the way over to the right. So let's try canvas dot width. Because you remember that's how many pixels we had wide and to work with in the browser. So this should put it all the way to the right. And now comma. And we don't want it to be moved in the Y direction at all. So let's just keep that 0. So 0, comma. And then enter in our variable names that we had created. So rect W and rect H. So rectangle width and rectangle height. And then remember the semicolon at the end. All right, let's go check out our three. We should have 3 rectangles now. So let's go see if that's the case. Uh-oh. Wait, we got magenta in the middle. We got red in the top left corner. And we should have white in the top right corner. Well, I knew this ahead of time, but I wanted to show you that the rectangle drawing function starts at where you tell it to start, and then it draws to the right, and then it draws down. So it said, okay, you want me to start at the canvas width, which is right there, and then I'm going to draw to the right and down. And therefore, our white rectangle is off in space somewhere, and it's way off to the right, and it's outside the window, so we can't see it. So let's fix that. And that just requires some very simple math. So canvas width was too far, right? So let's try a number. So minus, I don't know, 20. Let's see if we can see it. Oh, there it is. But it's chopped off. So now we need to move it back exactly the width of the rectangle itself. So let's add that variable back in. So now instead of the hard-coded value of 20, erase that and just put rectangle width. So in other words, it'll go to the canvas's edge on the right, and then instead of starting to draw there, which will chop off our rectangle, it'll move back the rectangle's width, and then it'll start to draw the width and the height, and we should be able to see the full rectangle. So let's go see if that's the case. Yay! Okay, so we have the full rectangle in the very top right-hand corner. Now let's do 2 more. So we're going to do the bottom left-hand corner and then the bottom right-hand corner. And before I enter the code to place these new rectangles on the bottom left and the bottom right, see if you can guess what I'm going to type in the function parameters before I start to type it, using your new knowledge of the canvas width, the canvas height, and the rectangle width and the rectangle height variables that we had created. So hit enter once more. Context dot fill style. Let's make this one blue. Semicolon, and then context fill rectangle, open parenthesis, and I want the bottom left-hand corner. So see if you can guess where that's going to be. So if you guessed canvas height for this rectangle, you're very close. But remember, it'll chop it off because it'll place it too far down. So we need to bring it back up by the rectangle height. So minus rectangle height. That's where it'll start drawing the rectangle. And now we just fill in our usual rectangle width and rectangle height. And remember the semicolon. So let's go check that out. There it is. So we have a new blue rectangle in the bottom left corner of the screen. Let's finish up with one more rectangle, and let's make a green rectangle down on the bottom right-hand corner, way down here. Again, see if you can guess what I'm going to type before I start typing it. I want a green rectangle. So how do I do that? So context dot fill style. You can click on here if it shows up, equals quote green. Don't forget the semicolon. Let me actually scroll up just a little bit so that it's not chopped off the screen here. So context fill rectangle, fill rect, open parentheses. And now I need it all the way to the right. Canvas dot width. Now if you guess canvas width, you're close, but remember it's going to chop it off. So it's going to start drawing at the canvas width, which is too far over. So we need to bring it back by the rectangle width itself. So minus rectangle width, comma, canvas dot height. And again, it would chop it off just like this one. So we need to bring it back by the rectangle's height itself. So canvas.height minus rectangle height, comma. And then we can put our rectangle width and rectangle height in the last two parameter spots. So rectangle width and rectangle height. And remember the semicolon. And now let's see our finished product. We should have 5 total rectangles, 1 in the middle and 1 in each corner of the screen. All right, we did it. So we have the magenta rectangle in the middle, and then we have a red rectangle in the top left, a blue rectangle in the bottom left, and then a white rectangle in the top right, and the green rectangle in the bottom right-hand corner of the browser window. And we are successfully using the entire browser window. So another cool thing that I want to show you is that since we created variables for the rectangle width and the rectangle height, we can easily go back in our code and just change these values, and it'll affect all these lines down here, and they'll all display correctly in the browser. So let's try 200 for the height, and then take a look. So that's pretty cool. Now they're really tall rectangles, but this one's still right in the middle, and then these are right at the corners. There's no part of them that is chopped off. And you can see the text even shows up over the rectangle, which is kind of cool. So if you want to have some kind of output or debugging text or something like that, you can put it either in the top left corner or the bottom left corner down here. So that's really useful to have. Let's try really big rectangles. So 400 by 200. And again, the magenta one is right in the middle. And then we have the red, the blue, the white, and green all in their respective corners, and they're displayed perfectly. No part of them is chopped off. And you can still see the text over the red rectangle. So that's really cool. And it shows you the power of having variables that contain the values instead of hard coding the values themselves down in the functions. Now we can go back to our older one, so 40 and 20. And it should be back to where we started. So now we can use that information in the near future to start writing our ray tracer, because what we're going to do is actually loop over all the pixels on the screen. So we're going to start right where this red rectangle starts. And we're going to start right there in that first pixel, and then go one pixel at a time, go all the way across, next row, next row, next row, and so on, all the way down to the bottom of this green rectangle, right to the last pixel. And we're going to perform a ray tracing operation and send out a ray through each of those millions of pixels. And so we need to have an understanding of where the middle of the screen is and where the edges of the screen are and where the corners are, so that we can use that to correctly display our ray traced image in the future. All right, so I hope you had fun with me today in drawing all the little rectangles on the screen. So next time we're going to take a look at JavaScript as a programming language in much more detail, and I'll show you how it is used to manipulate the elements on your HTML document so that we can give functionality to our web pages, as well as perform mathematical operations that we'll need to do when we start writing our ray tracers in the near future. And so I'm really looking forward to getting into JavaScript in more detail next time. And so I'll see you on the next episode.